Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Glacier Book Club. It's a really exciting night. There's been so much excitement about Ray Djuff's new book about Glacier's red buses, such an iconic part of the park. And Ray has been also an incredible part of the fabric of the park and the history of the park. I don't know that there's a better park historian than Ray. With due respect to George Bristol and some others, particularly in terms of current history. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight. I'm going to embarrass Ray because Ray has been working with the park to help curate some motion picture video recently as a volunteer with the park, which has been really important to us. Project that, thanks to you as our donors, have helped support. But tonight we're going to talk about his remarkable book, Glacier's Reds. Ray, as you know, is a historian, journalist, reporter, and cheesemonger. If cheesemonger is a surprise, I'm going to refer you to a wonderful article that the Flathead Beacon wrote here fairly recently, and we will get into cheese a little bit later, Ray. And Gracie's going to put a link to that article in the chat for us. And Ray, Ray, thank you for joining us.
Oh, yeah, welcome. Glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's you came to as a in the Beacon article again as a source of some of this. So as I understand it, you came to your love of history in Germany and your love of the mountains in Banff as part of your father's journey as a member of the Canadian military. Tell us a little about that kind of origin story.
Oh, well, anyone who's been a military brat knows what it's like to be hauled around by your parents wherever they dad or mom gets posted. In our case, it was over to Germany for 3 years. Dad was Canadian military, and I was young at the time, but mom and dad would take us around. You wanted to see castles. I mean, Germany's a place to see castles. History going back 1,000 or more years. And Um, you lived with recent history as well. The first time I was over there, it was starting in 1962, was only 17 years after the Second War. So there were buildings that were still pockmarked with bullet holes. And I would find old German coins on the ground and dated back to the war and even earlier era. I also got to know some of the German families, and they invited us into their homes. We got to know them a little bit. And in one case, they were showing me money from the inflationary period post First World War, so from the 1920s. And you can't help but the history was alive because these people had been there, they lived it, and they talked about it. So you can't walk away without being impressed in some ways and it imbuing itself in you. And that's what I took away from.
And came out west, to the Rocky Mountains, and had some experience in Banff that then led you to the Prince of Wales Hotel.
Yeah, I was an Army cadet when I was over in Germany, and the second time we were there, I was selected to attend the Banff Army Cadet Camp, which was supposed to be the two best cadets from each corps across in cadet corps across Canada. We spent the summer there. We hiked, we climbed, we camped out. I was doing rappelling, as I said, climbing. We went up mountains, went around lakes, all the usual things you'd do. And it just I'd not spent that much time in the Rockies. So again, it gets under your skin. When I finished my first year of university, I was looking for a job. I was hoping to get one as a fire watch, one of the fire towers. Didn't happen. Then I saw a posting for a job opening at the Prince of Wales Hotel. Never been there, but it was in the mountains, and that's all I needed. So off I went, and there I was a bartender. You get a lot of questions, and I went looking for answers. Actually, made it an excuse when I returned for my second year of university because I wanted to learn more about Waterton. I would take a course that was something about Western Canadian history, or where I could write an article about Waterton and use my time at university to research it. So I'd have the background when I went back the next year to know what to tell people. It just kind of grown and continued since then.
And you wrote a book, of course, about the Prince of Wales Hotel, and you've written a book about the other chalets in Glacier National Park. And had you always had a book about the red buses in your mind?
No, that came about during I'll call it the first red bus crisis of 1999. Uh, I'd written a little bit about it, but there was a request for background information, particularly on the part of Leroy Lott, a fellow from Texas who'd been a driver in 1950, 1949 and 1950. So I put together what became a three-piece article in the Inside Trail for the Glacier Park Foundation about the history of the buses. And the idea was to make the public aware, starting first with foundation members and kind of spreading out after that. Um, and Lee, I'd not met Leroy, but Leroy had learned of me through this. And I became involved in some ways, in a very minor way, in the whole restoration of the buses in 1999, just providing a little bit of historical background. But Leroy was insistent that I had the information. I needed to write the story. It kind of sat and sat and sat until what, 6 or so years ago. I was involved in another research project. I'd gone down a rabbit hole where I simply was looking for information that was endless. I had to break away from it. So I started a new project as a way to break away. And that was let's get the story done on the buses. That's where it came from.
And so a little bit of time in getting that done, published, I think 2024, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot has transpired. You know, we were built Ford tough, and we've had a new concessionaire come into the mix with Xanterra from GPI, all of which you talk about beautifully in your book. And again, thanks to the many people who are on tonight. I know there are some new folks, and I'm imagining there are some red bus drivers here. If you want to use the chat and let us know, A, you're a jammer, and B, what bus you were on and what years, that would be super fun. And Amy, maybe we can keep track of that a little bit somewhere, and kind of feed that back to Ray. Again, also, if you have questions, we're going to use the chat for questions. Don't be alarmed if Amy asks you to unmute your phone, your Zoom to ask your question directly. But I, of course, can't help myself. I've been, I've written up out a whole bunch of questions, so I'm going to get through some of those. I warned Ray in advance that I was going to ask him what his favorite model was, and I think he was concerned I was thinking about like the models we all made as kids. But no, I'm talking about the favorite red bus models. So the Chalmers 36, the TDB. What is the one that, if you were going to Bonhams, what's the one that would come home with you?
oh boy. I think the Indiana, because it was just such an unusual bus. It looks very much like a 706, and it came out in 35, so the year before, but it had unusual features. It could be a true convertible, not just a rollback top, but you could take off what would be the top header for the
Mm,
doors,
wow.
and you could remove the windows as well. So it was truly a convertible. There was nothing else like it. Regrettably, the only surviving Indiana that I know was the one that came out of Glacier, and they it had been sent by Hayes and was Howard Hayes, head of the bus company, and it was modified, and all of those wonderful features that were in the bus were taken out. So it was made to look like a Model 706, which is kind of sad. But if I could find an original one and I had Bill Gates sort of money, wow, that's what I'd bring home.
If wishes were horses, we'd all ride. My uncle used to like to
Oh
say.
yeah.
So
Hey,
the
can hear
history
you, but
of autos and red buses in the park, I think is obviously quite fascinating. As a reader, it seemed to me that the early attempts to use wagons and horses, pretty quickly that was found out that that just wasn't going to be the case. Does that feel right to you? That as a reader, did I get that right? That within a fairly quick amount of time, the concessionaires and the park and the railroad said, look, these newfangled motor vehicles are the way to go.
Well, there were a couple of factors there. One is I do talk about the roads, and you have to understand just how pitifully poor they were back in the day.
Yeah.
The other thing that I tried to stress in the book is that the Brewsters faced a really unreasonable challenge in setting up the horses and wagons. The Brewsters were based in Banff National Park in Canada. So that Louis Hill, the head of the Great Northern Railway, asked them to come to Glacier and set up an organization. That was fine, except they only had months to do so. So you can imagine in the summer of 1912, they've got to bring personnel from Canada to Montana. They've got to find the horses they need. They've got to find the saddles they need. They've got to take the guides across trails they've never been across before. Even if they'd hired locals, some of these trails were just being cut at this particular time. They had to figure out where the camps would go, just the logistics of the entire setup in only a period of months in that first year. And then the whole thing shuts down in September, and you've got over the winter to figure it out and come back again and restart it all. It was an impossible task and made worse because of the road conditions. So, yeah, unenviable, impossible, and it was almost a fait accompli right from the beginning. It wasn't going to work.
That's a
And
really, the road conditions are a really great point, and the archives in Glacier National Park has one of the old wagons as well as one of the red buses, which you point out in the book.
they've got two.
Um, Two, right? Yeah. So how long did it take you to research this book, Ray?
Um, the research was a bit tricky. I started in 2019, and of course, 2020 you get COVID, and that shut down the border because I'm in Canada. So I needed to do research at the park archive, and I couldn't get across the border to come to the States until I think it was 2022, which really hampered my work.
Yeah.
In the meantime, as well, little family crisis went through. There was just a whole bunch of a host of other things, as well as 2020, COVID. So there was research and all the other stuff that came up in the meantime that complicated matters, that dragged it out and made it a 5 year period. It could have been
And
done in three if that hadn't been the case.
and you mentioned earlier our friends at the Glacier Park Foundation, and some of you may not be familiar with the Glacier Park Foundation, but this is their publication, The Inside Trail, and they are John Hagan, who runs that, is a former park employee, and he's been running the foundation for years and years and years. There's basically a membership organization of former employees in the park. And they just do a terrific job really focusing on history. And I know you've worked a lot with the foundation as well.
Yeah, it's I've been involved, I think, since 1995 or thereabouts, and contributed a lot of articles and just other material. It's been fun. It's been fun.
Well, you're a great storyteller. And one of the things that you do, I think, really effectively in this book is you don't just have blinders on and tell us about the red buses, but we get these vignettes as well in time. For example, of Mather blowing up the sawmill, right? So, how do you come about those stories, and how do you put together the puzzle about how many of those should I tell? Which ones should I tell, and where do they go? How do you think about that as an author?
Oh, good grief. Um, the Mather story I knew. It was while doing the research, I discovered the Roe Emery connection, where Mather had asked Roe Emery, who owned the bus or headed the bus company at the time, to bring a bus up to to pick up Mather as well as a crew of Glacier Park employees. And they all wanted to go to Many Glacier Hotel, where Mather would eventually blow up the sawmill there. And little did Emery know when the bus came up that it would be carrying not only Mather and the employees, but 100 pounds of dynamite.
Wow.
So I hadn't known about that connection, and that was just through the research. Research really becomes the basis for everything. You just keep digging away at various archival sources, and it just bubbles to the surface eventually. And you get excited when you find something like that I didn't know that. That's what I want to tell people. There's a lot of stories at the back at the end of Glacier's Reds where I couldn't include them in the narrative, but I wanted to include them because they capture so well the essence. And that was material that came out of actually the copies of the Inside Trail. A lot of them were from that. Also, gear jammers had written to me when they learned about this, and I solicited their stories. And again, that kind of came forward. But at the very basis, it all comes back to research, just digging through original material.
And speaking of that, I want to talk a little bit and give a real shout out to Gene Tabbert and the crew at the National Park Service Glacier Parks Museum Archives. This is they do a remarkable job with not enough resources. We're very proud of the Conservancy, and again, thanks to you all as donors, that we've been investing in this maintenance of park history program for a number of years. Continue to do that. But maybe Ray, you spend a lot of time there. Maybe you can give some context to kind of the difficult situation that the park archives is in that Gene so artfully manages every day.
Yeah, she does an incredible job, and Deirdre Shaw before her
For
also
sure.
needs a shout out on that front. Um, Jean's done a wonderful job of continuing that legacy. There's just so many things they could use: uh, time and well, money to be able to buy equipment for staffing, to handle the requests that come in. It's a balancing act. I don't know how Jean does it. Truly, I don't know how she does it. I was just over there yesterday, and again, she had us in a fun time for us, just kind of going through the material. But the you can see there's always something on her mind about something else that needs to get done, and it's a resource that really could use support. And what the Conservancy has done to help is amazing. And thank you, thank you. It makes my research job easier for all the resources you have.
We're honored to do it, and we've been working with the park on a concept, funding concept that they've gotten some preliminary approval for to create a new museum archives facility.
Wow, good.
And that could be very exciting. It could have me lubricating many of your pockets as well, which is great because we want to play a role in that. The federal government has said that they are interested in it. They think it's important. Some of these archival pieces are not protected to the standards one would expect, and that's an important thing. It's not important until the day it lights on fire, right? And so that's something we're going to be working on. You'll hear more from me on that later. I've been going on quite a long time, and I think I could talk to Ray all night. But Amy Lucky, I assume we have some questions in the chat and perhaps some jammers in the chat.
Well, yes, Doug, I feel like we opened a can of worms in a great way. We opened a bus, we opened a red bus, something. We took the top off. I think everybody would agree from the reactions that we need to hear from our other Doug first, because I think he has a story to tell. And then also Lindsay and Kelsey and Pat were jammers, and I would love to hear them unmute after Dave's story and maybe tell a little bit about their stories as well. So, Dave, would you be willing to add some color to your story by unmuting? I'm sorry, Doug.
Yeah, yeah. Hi, Lindsay. Haven't seen you since '79. That's good to see you on here too. But yeah, that was a fun event. We dropped off a tour at Rising Sun at St. Mary and got an assignment to drive the 10 miles of straight road from St. Mary to Rising Sun. And if you know the park, that's the only kind of straight piece of road in the park. So when Rick and I got asked to drive two empty buses on a straight piece of road, it's kind of assumed what we would do. So as soon as we got through the entrance station, we just put the pedals on the floor and fast as those old things could go to Rising Sun. And right before Rising Sun, there was a ranger with a speed trap. And that ranger, he made good money at that speed trap because he was catching the families um, driving out of the park on a hot day with screaming kids in the back seat, and they were driving fast to get to the ice cream parlor in St. Mary's. So, but he was facing the other way. We were coming into the park. So when we saw the Ranger speed trap, we just kept pedals on the floor, roared right past him. I think Rick and I were both thinking the same thing. I still remember looking in the big rearview mirror and seeing road patrol starting a very slow 3-point turn to come after us. So we continued as fast as we could. It was lunchtime. We assumed there'd be a dozen other buses at Rising Sun. Sure enough. So we quickly pulled our buses in amongst the other 12 buses and ran down to the employee cafeteria before he came into the parking lot. And the employee cafeteria at Rising Sun is mostly below ground, but there's two little windows that look out at ground level right at the sidewalk. And so Rick and I bust into the lunchroom. We say, hey, everybody, look, we just raced two buses past the speed trap, but I don't think he knows which buses they were. So everyone just be cool, okay? So we're all looking at the little windows, and sure enough, there's the green pants and the shiny black shoes, and he's walking up to the front desk. And then we wait and wait, and then here's the shiny black shoes coming back, and he turns the corner to come down to the lunchroom. Uh-oh. Um, and I only had a few seconds, but I quickly told the other drivers, hey, quick, give me some of your food so it doesn't look like we just came in here. So one guy's handing me an ice cream cone. A couple others are sliding drinks in front of me. And we didn't think through that part very well. So when Ranger comes in the door, the whole place goes quiet. He's standing in the doorway and everyone's looking at him. And he finally says, dang, I didn't think those things could go that fast. And the whole place busted up laughing. It calms down. He looks over at the table of jammer drivers. He looks right at me and he says, gee, son, you thirsty? And I said, yeah, big hike yesterday. I'm just rehydrating here. Again, the place breaks up laughing. He's still standing in the doorway. And he puts his hands on his hips and he says, well, I don't know which one of it was, so just don't let it happen again. And he walked off and we got away with it.
Classic. What a great
You
story.
sure did. Thanks for sharing that, Doug.
In fact, I was nagging Margaret to chase down the list of rangers who worked at St. Mary that summer. There would have only been 2 or 3. You know, Doug normally runs a very well-behaved book club, but I thought if Margaret could find the ranger, that we could make this like a Jerry Springer show instead of the normal book club. But we'll do that next time.
That's fun.
Wow, that is something to shoot for sure, in future book clubs as well. We'll see if we can find some controversy. So, Lindsay, would you be willing to unmute and share your story? Jammer story?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Got
We
you.
sure can.
Well, I've got nothing nearly as exciting as Doug, although I will claim that I taught him how to drive in 1979, because that was my second year and I was doing some training then. Glacier was the highlight of my life, and as I've said many times, life has been a disappointment ever since. And I enjoyed Ray's book immensely, and I'm pleased to find out that he featured a picture of me in the inside of the back cover.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, a little hard to, the coloring is problematic.
on Zoom. Yeah.
Anyway,
And you drove the same bus that your dad drove. Is that
Yes,
correct?
my dad drove bus 96 in 1947, and the bus was 10 years old then.
Wow.
I gotta say, you guys look awful good for being jammers in 1979. That's awesome.
And I do
Yeah,
have one question for Ray. I hope he'll just touch on what's going on right now with buses, if there's another refurbishment going on. If you could talk a little bit about that, I'd be very interested.
actually, I mentioned it in the back of the book. It's covered in there. So this is part of the follow-up to put the buses on new chassis again, just to keep them going, make sure there won't be another crisis like there was in 1999. But I've written about it. If you got the book, it's in the back.
And is that going on? I've gotten in the book, it was just starting up. Is it continuing on? Are they going to do
Yes, it
all
continues
buses?
every year. They send a bus or two or three over to be refurbished.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but I think, and you talk about this in your book as well, when the park negotiated a concession, it provided that the concessionaire set money aside in order to provide for the regular rehabilitation of the buses so that they weren't trying to come up with some large amount every 20 years, but instead do this regularly and have cash flow based on a certain portion of each ticket price or something like that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, those are great stories. I mean, I guess I could have been there with you. I was 19 in 1979, so maybe I just missed you by that much. I just don't look as good as you guys do.
I
What
feel
else
like
you
there's
got
still
for us,
time to be a
Amy?
jammer. So we also heard from two other jammers. Kelsey mentioned that her dad drove bus number 89, 87 in the 70s, and it's how he met her mom, who worked at Glacier Park Lodge. So I just love that. Another bit of Glacier magic. And then Pat, also on tonight, was a jammer in 2021 and 2023. So a more recent jammer. Yeah, if you guys are interested in telling more about your stories, we'd love to hear them. And I don't have any other questions yet, but maybe after we just kind of got through the oh wait, I'm sorry. Yes, Don just mentioned that Glacier's Reds is certainly top of his sort of favorite list. So interesting, engaging, and thorough.
And
So
fear not about
he really
questions,
liked the
Amy.
read.
Fear not.
So maybe we want to go to a giveaway or the speed round, or if you want to just do more questions, and then the
Yeah.
folks who are on can also add some to the chat.
Gracie, I know you've got some fun trinkets tonight.
Yes, we have a red bus pin and a red bus tea towels to give away to three people. We have three of each. And
All
so I have the names here, but we have
Okay.
Pat Owen, Jen B, and Dale Scott are the giveaway winners. So if you three want to email us over at info@glacier.org, and then we can make sure to get you your items.
And I'm going to get back to, I have a few more questions here as well, but I want to thank Ray in advance. He has agreed to sign book plates for folks, and Ray's actually in town, which is awesome. And so if you want a book plate signed so you can put it in your book, just same email address, info@glacier.org, and Gracie will take care of you. And again, thanks, Ray. It means a lot to people to be able to have an author signature in their book, especially such a great book and such a great author. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you talked earlier about the Tales from the Driver's Seat, the end portion of the book, with a bunch of great stories from, I mentioned Hugh Ambrose, who, the late Hugh Ambrose, another great American writer. As you put those together, do you have any personal favorites? Not the people. We won't make you do that.
Oh
But the
no,
stories.
one of the one that Doug told is actually one of my favorites. Uh, oh boy, I've actually got to go back to the book and remind myself uh, a couple of them. There, there was oh, forgive me here. Just
No, it's a, and when I think about Hugh, and I got the privilege, Hugh was a very dear friend of mine. So, when you think about a historian like Hugh Ambrose, I think Hugh came to that. I think he would tell you if he was still with us that he came to his work as a historian, yes, through his father, but also through driving boats at Gates of the Mountains and driving a red bus and becoming a storyteller. I mean, you talk about that a lot in your book. That to be a successful red bus driver, you write, you have to be a great storyteller, right? And so I think when you think about people like you, who then turned that into something that became their life's work, it's really inspiring. Okay, so I bought you a little time there, Ray.
well, I was just thinking of a story that Michael Buck told, and he was a truck driver delivering laundry and other things and he'd taken a laundry uh, supply up to Many Glacier Hotel, and unfortunately didn't have a lot of napkins for the dining room. And the dining room manager went berserk, phoned East Glacier saying, "What happened to my laundry order?" And Michael returned, and basically they wanted that laundry up there. And Michael was trying to find a vehicle to be able to take it up there. They didn't want to, it was a small hamper. They didn't want to give him a truck. That was a waste of fuel. And when Michael Buck went over um, to look for other vehicles, basically they shut him down and they said, "You have a choice. Either this one truck, a half ton, which was in very poor condition, it might not make the trip, or the personal Mercedes Benz of Don Hummel, the head of the hotel company at the time." And he made his choice. He took the Mercedes Benz. Well, Michael is driving with this hamper of laundry to Many Glacier Hotel, and in the opposite direction comes Don Hummel. Sees his car being driven by this young kid, and Hummel pulls a Yui and chases it down Michael Buck, pulls him over, and basically, "Why do you have my car?" Michael explained it. He said that that was the only option they gave me, a truck that wouldn't work or your car. So I took it. That's the option I was given.
Right.
Hummel wanted to check it out. He did. And Michael Buck says nobody afterwards questioned him about what happened. Don Hummel never came back, never reprimanded him. So it was, yeah, he was okay. But it was just the idea of being chased down by your boss, wondering why you're driving his car. Pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a very cool story. I also love the story of the 3M CEO and
Yes,
the late night drive to check on the
check out the Scotch
reflective
Brite.
paint, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because they're the family and the foundation are actually donors of ours. So I took that
Oh,
section and sent it to them because I'm not sure whether they've know the story of that.
really?
I just did that quite recently. So I'll let you know what if I hear back
That'd be
from.
great.
Yeah, yeah. So lots of great stories, probably more than you could use. Um, Tell us about a story or two that didn't make it into the book, but that are still on your research pad about this is really interesting. I need to know more about this, or I'd really like to tell this story, but it doesn't fit in this particular book.
Well, I hinted at one, and that is a proposal by Howard Hayes, head of the bus company, his partner Roe Emery, and Walter White, not from Breaking Bad, but the Walter White who owned the White Motor Company that made the Model 706 buses. And I mentioned just briefly how they had a proposal to buy every concession in Yellowstone National Park, in Glacier National Park, and in Rocky Mountain National Park. And it all hinged on getting Harry Child, who was the key concessioner in Yellowstone, to sell out. If they could get him, they knew they had everything else. Walter White would supply the money. It was left to Roe Emery and Howard Hayes to be able to negotiate the deal. And um, they came up with this secret code words that they would use so nobody else would learn about it. Hayes, who knew Harry Child, went out to California where Harry lived and was talking to him. And if things came up, I think the word oranges was supposed to be mean buses, and apples was like hotels. It was all kinds of things that they had of that nature. And um, this went on for a month or two, and finally it just collapsed. Or no, I'm sorry. Harry Child asked for, I think it was $250,000 for everything he owned in Yellowstone. And they turned to Howard Hayes and Roe Emery turned to Walter White and said, "Can you get us the money?" Walter White said yes, but Harry Child wanted that 250,000 on the barrelhead. No installments, nothing. I wanted cash or nothing. And Emery said, "Look, I can get the money, but not 250,000 in one go just to throw at this." And the whole deal collapsed. But it'd be interesting to think about the possibility of what would have been back at that time, like a modern Xanterra, where they have concessions in multiple national parks. But these three guys would have locked up three national parks, everything. They would have bought out all the hotels in Glacier from the Great Northern. They knew the Great Northern was ready to sell. The Saddle Horse Company, they had the buses already. They would take the boats. And then the Yellowstone, the same sort of thing. It's an amazing idea. Uh, like I say, I hint at it, but there's a lot more to the story I could tell, and then maybe sometime in the future somewhere else there'll be another
Yeah,
book.
there you go. So many great stories about our, America's best idea, right? And we're so fortunate to have you tonight. And our last book of the year is Natural Rivals, and it's about the rivalry between John Muir and Pinchot, and kind of a larger landscape, but still amazing stories about that time in the world, and you've contributed so richly to the history. And I told you I would embarrass you a little bit, and so I'm going to do so now. We funded some 3 or 4 years ago, unfortunately during COVID, a project to digitize some motion picture film that the archives that Deirdre, and because Deirdre I think was still there at the time, just leaving, and Jean was there, that they had found that, of course, were in precarious condition, really couldn't put them into a film machine and stretch them; they would likely break. And so we've just completed the funding of, and they've completed the work related to digitizing those. But you can't just throw them on a DVD and put them out in the world. You need somebody to. You should see this spreadsheet. Gene showed us portions of it. You need experts to look at the film and tell you what they're seeing, right? Is this little railroad track, is that the Going to the Sun Road, or is that a ptarmigan tunnel, right? And so, Ray, talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing, helping curate an index, if you will, so that that incredible historic archive is going to be able to be very usable for researchers and the public.
Well, Gene put together a list of, I think, 8 or 10 films in a couple of groups. So I've gone through almost 30. I'm working towards 30. And the idea was to look at these films and record second by second, if we had to, what we saw that might be important for somebody. So um, a lot of the ones I had were regarding buildings and vehicles, which fortunately I have a little more knowledge about. There were others on firefighting I looked at and I know nothing about this and couldn't contribute much except one time I saw a helicopter. Okay, I know what that is. I could identify it. But on the ones where there were hotels and vehicles, like the hotels I'd see, and there were cues for me about what era it might be, whether it's the actual building itself, things in the foreground, the background, whatever the case might be, or even the vehicles that were sitting in front of it. I could so I could, of course, identify the hotel, maybe make a comment about what I saw in the picture. And if there were vehicles in there, that would help me pinpoint often exactly when something occurred or when it was filmed. And that was the surprising part for me. I'll give you one example. At Lake McDonald Lodge, there was an image I viewed of the lodge and a bus pulling away from it. So the bus, it was a model 1545, which helped me put a time frame on it. Then it was a question of just what was it doing there? And I was looking at the passengers who were on it. I might have commented about that, but the bus turns straight to the camera, and all of a sudden I can see the license plate. I can't make out the year, but I have a chart with every Montana license plate on it. And so I simply went through and having a rough idea already because of the vehicle and just a couple of things about the hotel, I was able to pin down exactly what year it was based on the license plate. And that would have been otherwise someone would have just said circa and possibly made a wild guess about dates. And I've had a lot of fun trying to get narrow the focus on photographs, and in this particular case, a lot of films like that. In other ones, they were showing films like the Going to the Sun Chalet. It's one of my favorite spots in the park is Sun Point because that's where those chalets were. And it's very seldom visited, but to stand there and realize what was there and why they're not there anymore, just because of the elements that they were exposed to, the wind and the rain and whatnot and snow. But to see those moving images of people there and things moving around and whatnot just brought it to life, especially when you've stood there yourself and imagined it, but here it was on film. So that was fun. That was just plain fun. It didn't seem
Yeah,
like
that's
work
really
when I was
cool.
going through.
And the films are available. They haven't curated all of them yet, but there are. And maybe Gracie, if you know how to find that site where the some of the films people can look at little snippets of the films. I'm with you, Ray. I mean, that ability to go back in time. I mean, you go to Sun Point, you get to some of the infrastructure is still there, right?
Yeah.
From the
I,
chalets, and then to think about the Black family and their involvement in getting rid of the chalets, and so many great stories. And thank you for your service because again, this is an area where volunteers like you are key. Support from uh, the philanthropic partner like the Conservancy is key, and it really helps kind of, I think, curate this whole idea of wonder in Glacier National Park, and our job is to preserve that for future generations. And this film would have been gone were it not for you and the thoughts of the park archivists, Jean and Deirdre, and then the ability of private philanthropy. So we fund a lot in the wonder category. That includes for us Native America Speaks programming, school field trips for kids, this kind of archival research and support. And if that floats your boat, we have a page specific to Wonder where you can make a contribution. And because we've got a full slate of things we want to support going forward to curate that experience for future generations. So thank you for all your support, past, present, and future. Amy, I see that you've got a couple of additional questions in the chat.
I sure do. Our good friend Dave Baylor, who is never shy on here. Dave, would you be willing to unmute and ask a couple of questions that you have?
Sure. I enjoyed the book, Ray. I enjoyed the detail, especially. I do some nonfiction writing too. And I'm just amazed at all of the details, the bus numbers. Did you have a matrix or a spreadsheet or something to keep all of that stuff
I
straight?
should. I don't. But yeah, I guess I don't want to play with the Excel because I know I'll lose something. However, I do have I'm jammer lists that are on Excel, and I'm moving over to Word only to create them so I have a list of knowing what jammer was there, what year, and what bus they drove. I've got 1,600 names. The bus driver names that I have go back into the teens,
Yeah.
and in some cases, bunch of drivers have given me full lists from their years. So on those lists, we also have sometimes hometowns where they came from. So yeah, it's crude what I have. An Excel spreadsheet would be perfect, but no, I work in my own little old-fashioned way.
It's okay, Ray. It's all right.
Another question?
I had a neighbor kid who was a jammer one year, maybe two, Dave Stewart from Seattle. So, but I've lost track of him. So
I might be able to find them.
I see also, Amy, that we had a note, and thank you for the reminder. Margaret Nelson from Federal Way, Washington, emailed me a couple of weeks ago. You in chapter 4, Ray, you talk about Elrod's guide, the 1924 guide, and it is still available. And Gracie has put a link to that. Thank you, Margaret, for reminding me about that. And sorry for the interruption, Amy.
It's a wonderful book.
Yeah, no problem. I also just wanted to mention, if we don't get to your question, we will have it saved in the chat, and we'll connect with Ray and get questions answered over email. So I just like to say that because it's disappointing to not get your question answered, but we'll try to get through everybody. I know that Doug has a couple of other stories. In particular, I would love to hear from him about the wooden panels on the inside of the buses. Doug, would you unmute again and share?
I almost didn't write that, but yeah, there were wooden panels on the inside of the buses. And what you got to know is the dormitories that the jammers were supposed to stay in were just disgusting. They were crowded and gross. So we would just live in the back of the buses. And we would take out the back seat and put a mattress in the back of the bus, and that was our home for the summer. And back then, they would not hire women for jammers. It was only men who were allowed to drive the buses. It took a threatened lawsuit in about 1980 or so before they would hire women. But for many years there, it was 30 male jammer bus drivers and about 1,500 waitresses and maids, all college students who would leave their boyfriends, back at college for the summer. So those wooden panels in the back of the buses had lots of notches in them that had meaning. And I haven't been in a rebuilt bus. I don't know if those wooden panels were saved or not.
They would have been replaced.
Yeah, they're probably somewhere. I hope someone understands the meaning.
Stories they can tell.
Yes, but the other fun one, real quick, your spreadsheet certainly has Dr. John Allen. Dr. John Allen drove buses there for 10 years. He went on to spend the rest of his life driving buses in Denali. He wasn't really a doctor, but he felt he got more respect from the tourists if he called himself Dr. Allen instead of John Allen. But he and some other jammers pulled their tips. They went into Kalispell to a garden center, ordered an 8-foot tall palm tree, and brought it up to Logan Pass after dark. They packed it up the boardwalk. It might not have been a boardwalk yet. They packed it up to the Hidden Lake Overlook and planted it on the skyline where the tourists on ranger walks could not miss it. So they left it up there so the rangers would have to explain to the tourists why there was a palm tree growing out of a snowbank at Logan Pass.
Classic.
Good stuff.
Oh, that's classic.
That might be the best story to come out of tonight. That's great. Imagine what social media could do with that if
John Allen. John Allen was one of the guys who, when he worked in Yellowstone, borrowed ranger uniforms and got a wheel and an axle. And right before Old Faithful goes off, they went off in the trees where the ranger people could see him, stuck this wheel in the ground and pretended like they were turning Old Faithful on and turning it off. That one actually made the Johnny Carson show back in the day. All right, I'll stop taking time. This is, but it's fun stuff.
We so appreciate your stories. Oh my gosh, just the best. Well, Keith also he wanted to let you know, Ray, that he has a 1952 jammer manual for you. He just hasn't finished it yet.
It was mentioned.
And Don Small, he wanted to know if you have any idea where he can buy one of the 1936 706 red bus models pictured on page 113. He said no success finding it in a Google search.
Really? Forgive
Can
me.
you hear
I
me,
think that's the
Amy?
model.
Amy, can
Sorry.
you hear me?
I can. Yep. Is this Don?
No, this is Keith. I was out at the park last summer looking for those same buses because my daughter had bought one back a year previously or 2 years previously, and they said they couldn't get them. So the gift shops at Lake McDonald and East Glacier Park both said the same thing, not available. I have one, thankfully. My daughter got one when she was out there.
The
Okay.
creator of that
Great. Thanks for the
model,
insight.
the creator of the model unfortunately passed away, and the production was continued for a short while afterwards and has ceased since. I thought someone else had picked it up and was going to remake them. I gather not. So it could be a rare collectible at this point, but not in production.
I think, and I talked to Julie Doherty, who is the director of our park stores, and they're on the hunt to try and find something that is that would be an appropriate replacement. So stand by, but it won't be the original ones for sure.
I'm taking
They're
bids on mine.
amazing.
Get a
The
hold of me on
original
that,
ones
Doug.
are amazingly accurate. Very nice models. Yeah, that's
Well,
awesome.
Oh,
Thanks, Lee.
there's Lindsay. Lindsay's showing his.
Yep, I'll take the highest bid.
Oh.
Thanks for the info, everyone. I appreciate it. This is Don. Thank you.
We're going to add an auction feature to our program. We're going to have the Jerry Springer show with auctions and a book discussion on the side, maybe.
That could be a good fundraiser.
I like it. I like it.
There
Well,
we go.
I did promise Ray that we would subject him to the speed rounds. Take a deep breath. I've tried to curate this with a little bit of a focus to our neighbors on the north, in the north, given that you come to us from Calgary or Calgary. I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced up there. So your first choice is about hikes and you don't get a third choice. You just get the two choices that I've chosen for you. And this is in the Waterton area, so you get the choice of Crypt Lake or Carthew Alderson.
I've done both, Crypt.
You can say which one, why you prefer them, but
I've done both and Crypt. They're both rewarding, great scenes when you get to the top, but it's a tunnel going into Crypt that just makes it that special.
It's remarkable. It's on everybody's list of the top 50 hikes in the world, for sure. It is. I will say that I'm not sure that's the trail that you should allow dogs on, because I had a nearly unfortunate incident with a dog just past there. But okay, so your second question related to chalets in the park is, we only have two left: Sperry or Granite?
Sperry.
Sperry.
Only because it's more full. I wish that Grant was otherwise, that both had the same full services. It's just the way it is. So there's a great friendship at both of them. Great locations, incredible view for views, Granite, but for atmosphere, Sperry.
And stand by, there's some discussion about trying to fix the water issue that has closed down the full service at Granite. And Kathy and I and others have been talking about that. It's not a small fix, but with the Great American Outdoors Act, many things are possible. So, and by the way, those of you who have visited Sperry since its reconstruction, all of this time that Ray has spent in Minneapolis in archives came in handy, because he was able to know where the original plans for the Sperry Chalet were, which were then used for the restoration of the chalet. So thank you for that. Okay, number 3, famous hockey players who then became restaurateurs. Your choice is Tim Horton or Lanny McDonald.
Well, that's easy, Tim Horton.
Tim Horton. Okay, you don't like the mustache isn't getting you with the Lanny McDonald?
Oh no, I love Lanny. He's from Calgary. He's a great
Yeah,
guy. But
yeah.
when you want a double double, you go to Tim Hortons. It's just that's the way it
Okay,
is.
that's my next question. So when you go to Tim Hortons, is it original blend black or is it double double?
It's double double.
Double double. Okay, all right. Well, that makes sense. Now I said we would come back to cheese. So and those of you who wonder what we're talking about, you have to read the Flathead the Flathead Beacon article. It's remarkable. And so you had a brief career as a cheesemonger. So
Mhm.
I'm going to give you two choices of British Columbia cheese: Castle Blue or Cabrit. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Kabritt.
Ooh, I must admit, I'm not familiar with either of them. Sorry. If you gave
Okay.
me an Alberta opportunity,
All
I
right.
go
Very
with
good.
Little
Well,
Meadows goat cheese.
you can, just as we might give you some questions to answer afterwards, we can give you that as homework. So thank you for humoring me with our speed round. And Amy, I don't know if you have a quick one more, or where are we?
I have a great comment from Patrick that maybe sums things up tonight. He says, "Hello, thank you for selecting a great book and this great discussion. I grew up in Sunburst, about 80 miles east of the park. We went to Glacier every chance we got, and his aunt and uncle owned a cabin in Essex across the tracks from the Isaac Walton Inn. Buses were a delightful fixture in my life and remain so. I think we can all sort of feel that way about the red buses. So thank you so much, Ray.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Yeah, it's awesome. So just before we go, what's next, Ray?
Actually, I'm just finished a book with two partners, Scott Tanner, who's watching this. Unfortunately, the other partner, Bill Lundgren, is enjoying himself in Nova Scotia on a bicycle tour, as best I
Nice.
know. And we've put together a book of what we think are hidden secrets and little known stories about Glacier. It's 65 plus stories of things we hope will surprise people. In one case, the Great Northern Railway vice president who worked from home 120 years ago, not a new phenomenon. Or about a medicine lodge that was between the two chalets as you go into Many Glacier Hotel. There was a structure there called a medicine lodge, very important to glacier history. Most people don't know anything about it, unrecognized, and all sorts, or a secret apartment that's related to the Glacier Park train station at East Glacier. Again, a story most people have no idea about. That should be coming out, fingers crossed, about December or just before Christmas.
Fascinating. That's awesome. Well, we will mark that on the calendar and put that under the tree for many a glacier lover. Ray Djuff, thank you so much for not only this evening, but for all you have done as Glacier's historian and continue to do. You are an important part of the park, an important part of our kind of larger glacier family. So thank you for spending time with us. Thank you all for joining us. I think we sold a record number of books for this book club, 102. And that just really warms my heart because it's such a great story from such a great human being. And again, thank you all for your support of what we do. Ray, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And everybody have a great and safe evening and enjoy this beautiful park of ours as we've gotten rid of our rain and are welcoming the sun again.